Namaskar everyone. My name is Sonali Kabra, and I'm co-founder of a green startup initiative, Enable Nature. I'm proud to be an alumni of IIIM Batch 2016-18, and I want to thank the Institute for giving me the opportunity to host today's webinar session. So I welcome you all. This session will throw light on the corporate world primarily in US and will help us to understand its nitty-gritties. We are honored to have amongst us Ms Shveta Saggar, Senior Marketing and Insights Researcher, NVIDIA, San Francisco, California. Ma'am graduated from IIIM in year 2000 and began her professional journey with Systema Sham Teleservices Limited as Marketing, Communication and Brand Manager. Later, she moved to US and held the office of the state legislative as communication manager and performed legislative research and fieldwork. In 2006, Ma'am joined NVIDIA, an American technology company, and managed industry partners as a part of strategic marketing unit. With persistence and determination, Ma'am evolved into growing market research and insights practice, and this led her to manage business in artificial intelligence verticals such as healthcare, autonomous machines, robots, and data science. Ma'am also manages data for diverse client base, including product marketing groups, business intelligence teams, personal relation, and investor relation groups. In her commendable career span of over 20 years, Ma'am worked at different levels in two countries, and when it comes to understanding of the corporate world, Ma'am is the apt person to gain knowledge from. On behalf of IIIM, I welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for sparing your valuable time for today's session.
Thank you, Sonali. Very kind of you. That was a very good introduction.
Before we move further, I would like to tell the viewers, you can, if you have any questions, you can drop it to me in the chat box. So, ma'am, before we hear from you about the corporate world, we would like you to share about your journey to US and the corporate world.
Sure. So I'm happy to do that. So let me see, where do I want to start? When I was thinking about this on, what would be helpful for you to understand, I thought uh, maybe I should go really back in time. Um, and I wanted to start by saying that whatever I tell you, it will, now I have a luxury of hindsight. I can look back and see what happened. But when you are making those decisions or when you're going through the things, they might not look as sorted, and that's completely all right. So whatever I tell you, the journey now looks like that, but when you're in it, it's completely different. So, take that, um, understand that. So the where I want to start. So I want to start by telling you that I actually started working long back, even before I did any of my MBAs. I started working. I had the first taste of sort of a corporate life when I was doing my bachelor's, and it was a great job. It was a teaching job. I was in the labs where you know people used to come to learn computers. So as they were learning the languages and doing the practical work, that's where I was. And the reason it was a great experience is because one, it kind of teaches you how to be a professional, or what could it mean to be a professional. And at the same time, the job itself was very interesting because everyone was learning at the same time, and I was learning with them. So that was super interesting for me. Um, when I joined IIIM, I was the third batch to pass from the institute. So back in 2000. Um, and it was fairly new. Actually, we were not even in the same building that now, you have a great campus. But for the first year, we were in a different campus, the older campus. So the institute was just starting to, find its legs, understand what it was going to be in future. And and what I learned from my experience there is, when you are new and if you have ambition, I guess the institute, there are a couple of things that happened. We had a lot of freedom to really explore, what our strengths are. We were encouraged to write a lot. We were encouraged to participate in a lot of events. There were lots of networks which were called upon by faculty and by people, other associated people to come into the institute. So there was an attitude of, we'll give it a go. And I think one of the most important things was the leadership was very important, uh, which really helped the institute grow to what it is. So those are the things that happened while I was doing the MBA or even before MBA. My first job, as Sonali mentioned, was in Sham Telelink. It was then called Sham Telelink, now it's called Systema. Um, and again, I would say a lot of the skills that I had learned, not probably not the things in the, you can't pick up the things in the book and right away implement them in the professional life. A lot of the skills that you learn, writing skills, networking skills, they were super important when I had that job. Um, the one thing I will say, being MBA students, it's not a profession where, you're a doctor, you do one thing, or, you're in engineering, you code. MBA is an interesting profession because you are actually the biggest skill you can probably learn is problem solving. So you're solving the problems of resources, of time management, of budget management, of people management, expectation management. So I think I did a lot of problem solving in my first job because first I started at a customer loyalty program. Then I moved to Marcom where I had to learn how to write a press release, for example, a professional press release. I had to learn how to write internal communications. Um, and that's not something you learn in the class, but you can translate a skill from the class into a job. I moved to US in 2002. I got married. I moved here. Um, and actually, I was very reluctant to either go back to school or because I had already worked for a few years in India, and I just thought I would come here, I would find a job. And the reason is that MBA is a type of profession where networks matter and where the working culture or the culture of the markets you're serving is super important. And that you probably can't easily translate from one country to another country or even, one corporate culture to another sometimes. Um, so I did two things. So one, I reluctantly started, I first started going for a couple of courses to a community college, just for a simple marketing course or something. And there I found actually a job in the legislative office so it's a political office. I wasn't really looking for that job, but the college had a pro bono internship, and I thought for 2 months it'll be a great experience for me to do that. Fortunately for me, that internship turned into a job. They offered me the job right away after internship. And I was with the senator's office and assembly member's office for pretty much the whole time that I did my part-time MBA. I did the part-time MBA and you would think if I've already done an MBA, I would have done another one. I probably did not need a lot of so I got a lot of credits for some things that I had already done. So if the course was same, the credits were transferred. But there were a lot of new things. Most of the new things were case studies. Most of the new things were around corporate culture, um, or how the businesses are done, or how the supply chains work, which is completely different, right? So the biggest two things that came out of that MBA, part-time MBA, was one, it was local, so I built a lot of network. And two, um, it was, you know, Even though I didn't want to be in the college, it was actually quite a lot of fun. The other thing was the part-time MBA, almost my entire class was a full-time working class. So in the morning, students would go to work, and in the evening, for 2 or 3 times a week, they would come in the class for 4 hours or something. So you meet a lot of people who are actually working full time, and the kind of problems and experiences they bring in the class is completely different than when you're not working. So it was a completely different experience. Um, the The interesting thing about my first corporate job at NVIDIA is that I actually got the job not just because I did an MBA, although it was through my network. I actually got a job because I was doing this political job. Um, so I got recruited into a team which is called strategic marketing. And the role is actually to manage partnerships with people, with partners outside NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, I can spend a few minutes explaining to you what we do, but whatever partners we have, um, strategic long-term partners, that group used to manage that. And it was very important that you are sensitive to information inside the company and you're sensitive to information that comes from inside the company. So that kind of role is very appropriate for someone who understands, sensitivity of things. And so, coming from a political office, uh, the VP who hired me actually thought that will be really helpful. So again, it was networks. It was my previous experience a little bit, but I did get recruited into something that I had never done before, as an experience. So, at NVIDIA, so what does NVIDIA do? NVIDIA is essentially it's an AI company that started as a graphics design company for gamers. So they design the graphics cards, the graphics chips, that get manufactured um, in Taiwan mainly, and then gets distributed around the world through partners to gamers. Last 10 years or so, we have invested heavily in artificial intelligence, which is now quickly becoming part of any vertical you can think of. So, fintech, healthcare, self-driving cars, robots, um, telecommunication, data science, everything pretty much has AI. Artificial intelligence is slightly different than coding. And the way it is different is in coding, you sort of create a logic, right? You say, if this is true, do this. If it's not true, do that. And that determines a programming language, right? In artificial intelligence, you actually don't tell the computer what is the right answer. You just show them a bunch of things and they learn themselves. So it is actually quite a different technique. It's not new, but it's different now because now the compute power that we have, um, is many times bigger than what we used to do. So for AI to work, you need to train a system, and when it is trained, you need to implement it. And we work in both the areas. And you need massive computing power to train the system. That's why now we are seeing AI become part of our world pretty quickly. What I do at NVIDIA now, is I'm a part of a group. It's a very small group, but I'm a part of a group in corporate marketing that actually does a lot of insights work. So if we are running a campaign, the campaign wants to understand who is the target segment, what do they look like, why do they buy things they buy, what are we trying to sell them, and how would we track if we are doing well. So we can probably help them with all of this. We don't 100% help everybody with everything, but we do some of this in pretty much all the projects. I'm not a gamer, but I'm very fascinated by this market. So I interview gamers. We do a lot of primary research. We do IDIs, which is individual interviews. We do focus groups. We do surveys. We do, um, based on data science, we try and do segmentation and things like that. So I spend, I would say, 80% of my time doing primary research on gamers and then on AI related stuff. The AI related stuff is very interesting. It is interesting because it's new for everybody. So there's not a lot of data to buy from outside. So we have to generate our own intelligence, our own insights. Thankfully, being leaders in AI, we actually have a lot of big networks of partners, of clients, and we are able to do a lot of primary research for that. So yeah, that was the background. That was hopefully helpful to understand where I was and where I am. A lot of it was, it just happened the way it happened, um, unplanned. And a lot of it was based on, I would say, um, building good networks, just giving it a go, taking calculated risk, but giving it a go. Because you will be in a profession where your basic skills will be solve problems, enable people to do what they do best, and just find a right fit for yourself. So, and what I mean by that is, so for me, for every day, it's I have to lean in into groups to understand what they're doing and what the problem are they trying to solve and how can I help. There isn't like I'm not part of a big like R&D research group or anything. So you just have to find the right fit. You have to solve the right problems. You have to ask the right questions. Um, and that's not what I was trained to do. But I think with time, if you can add enough value, you get there. So hopefully, Sonali, this was helpful. I if
Yes.
I don't, yeah, so maybe I'll stop there. I'll pause there so people can digest it a little bit.
So, ma'am, moving forward, there are quite a lot of differences when you have moved from India to the US corporate world, and there would be definitely some sort of challenges that you have would have faced there and still facing right now.
Yeah, so so let me answer that in a little bit different way. So culture is a very interesting thing in any company. Every company has a unique culture. And what I mean by that is, how do you write emails? How do you set up meetings? How are decisions made? Does one person make a decision, or are the decision made in a consensus form? Um, where are the ideas generated? Who, how does the credit work? Like who gets the credit at what point in time? Who is a like, do they differentiate between who will present versus who will create? These are very cultural differences. And they are not only different for country from country, they are also different from company to company, region to region. Asia, Europe, Americas, uh, Japan versus India versus US, and even within East Coast versus West Coast, or something like Bay Area versus outside Bay Area. So it's everywhere. And even if you switch companies within India, you will face some of that. But yes, if you change a country, there are differences. For example, at NVIDIA, um, when we write emails, which we write hundreds of emails every day, we don't really start emails with hi X or hi. We just come to the point, right? But if you work in a different country, or if you work in Japan, for example, that will definitely be a no-go, right? So those are small things I would say. And on a large level, I, the challenges are whether I will say for me, it was a little bit easier because that political office or the legislative office gave me a little bit of a start into the culture. So it wasn't very stark for me. And then the school really helped me bridge the gap very quickly because in the MBA school, there were people from, all sorts of, and everyone was working. So that was very helpful for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, pretty much everything is different. I would say the pace of decision making, implementation, um, how do you get budgets is very different. For me, I would say the one of the biggest things is, and it could be different in different companies, but at least for in NVIDIA, and even the legislative work, you are almost expected to make your own career in the sense that you have to be able to show others what can you do. So if I just wait for people to bring me work, it's never going to work out. Um, I just have to figure out what I'm good at and what real problems in the company I can solve, and then I can find my way. I would say that was the biggest change. You can't just expect something to come to you. You have to grow into a role yourself. You have to be a self-starter. Um, but I think what will be more helpful probably for you is what's not different. So everywhere there are a couple of skills I would say that are applicable. One for me was, don't never say never. Just give it a go. Give it a go, make a plan, try something, fail fast, learn fast, and move on. I think that's a very useful skill. And it's actually a skill. You have to practice it. It just, to some people it comes naturally, to others it doesn't, but just give it a go. And the other things I would say is you have to build good relationships. Um, and these are such general skills, you can use them anywhere, even in life, but just find a mentor, uh, colleagues that you make, keep in touch and really make those relationships work. I'm not just saying keep them for the sake of using them, just really, you know, make good relationships. Follow leaders that you admire. Um, Never ever burn bridges, right? If you leave a job, that's fine, but you don't have to um, burn bridges with people. Keep those relationships intact. Every place I have gone, every place that I have gone, all my previous relationships have in some way have had an effect. I've had to ask for references. I've had to ask for um, sort of experience certificates in US from India, and things like that. And it always pans out. So those two things I would say help you everywhere. But there are differences, and you just go with it.
So, ma'am, for these students who have just put a step forward towards their career, and initially it's really a problem that we have seen all over the world, I guess. When the freshers they join any organization, it's like they switch very frequently. And so, what would be your take on that?
So I think my take is it should be, well, I shouldn't probably say that. So I have been in this company for since 2006, right? So for a long time, 14, 15 years. The reason I did not change the company is because I found a cultural fit in the company. Number one, I like the people like me. I like the way they work. They probably like the way I work. At the same, so that was the number one thing. The number two thing is, um, obviously, you want to be paid well, you want to be respected for your work. Um, but that's secondary. I think the second most important thing, at least for me, was there are a couple of people. I think it'll help us if you can. Oh, thank you, Dinesh. You muted yourself. Um, So what really helped me, uh, sorry, the second thing I wanted to tell you was um, that the company evolved into a more interesting company pretty much year over year. So the reason you join another company is because you think that company has better future. But in my case, NVIDIA grew from a gaming company to a gaming and enterprise company and now to an AI company. So it kept up with times and became a leader in the field. And I just got to do new things every time. So it's fine if you want to change a job, but change it for the right reasons. Change it if the company you're going to has a better prospect overall, not just for you, overall. And if you're a better culture fit. If not, I would say stay because the longer relationships you build, I think they reap a lot of profits. And eventually you have to stop. If it's just the money, then it's different. But I would say, and I encourage you to read um, someone like Sheryl Sandberg, who is the Facebook the chief operating officer, and she says the same thing. So she did not join Google but Facebook because for the growth of where the company was going, Facebook had better prospects. Google was already established. So that would be my advice. The reason I stayed here was I was a great culture fit, and the company evolved itself. The company was growing and learning, and it was giving me a chance to do the same. Um, so it's a personal choice eventually, but that would be my take on it. I put a lot of value on building long, deep relationships. Um, you have to find a balance between not being too comfortable, but at the same time not being too quick to just jump for the heck of it, I would say.
Ma'am, presently we all know it's a bad time for all of us because of the COVID situation, and the situation is affecting all over the worldwide. So, ma'am, how are you and your company tackling with this and preparing for this situation of COVID?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of echo. I think it's Dinne. Yeah, there you go. So this mute is, yeah, so you are absolutely right. Unfortunately, these are unprecedented times, right? It's at least people, I mean, of course, you guys, but even my generation, the generation before, I would say people who are right now alive, they've never seen anything like this. It is serious. It has to be taken seriously, and it's affecting the way our lives are set up, right? And and the reason it's very critical is because it's affecting it quickly. So if the changes we are going through were happening over the course of 5 years, we would all adjust. That's fine. But we've had to adjust in a matter of 3 weeks or 3 months, which is just too soon, right? So that's why it's important to really think through. Um, well, first, let me start by saying, the time will pass. Um, Obviously, nothing stays this way it is. So, this will pass, something else will come. So don't lose hope on that. As far as the economic things are concerned, things are definitely slowing down. They will slow down more, unfortunately. There are some companies who will have a much better time than the others. So healthcare businesses, um, companies like Amazon, companies like any of the tech companies, so they will just do much better. And companies like retailers, restaurant, food businesses, apparel businesses, they'll just suffer. That's the nature of it, unless, of course, they can move online. Companies like mine. So I'll give you an example of what we are doing. For example, um, we are somewhere in the middle, in the sense that obviously we do a lot of stuff. Um, I was going to work up until 3 months before this happened every day, and so were the other 5,000 people that were on the campus, and now we are down to maybe 10 people who go to the campus. So we've shifted all of everybody um, to work from home, which means two things. One, there has to be infrastructure for this. And two, people have to be patient with it, right? Because when I do everything online, I have to follow up more with people. I have to make sure if there are 10 people on the meeting, I have to make sure that if there are 10 action items, I have to follow each one. And I'm not going to see them in the corridor, right? Or I have to literally email them. So it will change the nature of work or how you work or how you manage. And we just have to learn that. But I think the infrastructure thing is what it'll depend on company to company. Fortunately for us, our company is heavily invested in infrastructure on the data center side, so we are okay. In fact, that business is booming, which is great because everyone's moving work from home. So people will need new data centers, people will need new laptops, people will need better earphones, things like that. So you have to, it's not permanent, but there will be a shift when this is over. We understand that. After this is over, it's quite possible that half the people might think working from home at least twice a week is fine, which means they'll need a setup for at home, they'll need a temporary setup at office, right? So we are still thinking through all of that. But what I'm saying is that these changes are very sudden. People still have to run a business. We still have to launch products. We still have to sell. We still have to report earnings. We still have to talk. Like, so everything is going on, but it just needs to be done differently. We actually did one of our biggest conferences online. We shifted it from physical to online, and we doubled the number of participants. So we had to do a lot more work, but the results were phenomenal because more people can join online, right? Physically, not everybody can be here, but online it's double the number. So I think as long as companies are thinking through it, the decisions are being, and I will say one thing, you cannot do everything on by yourself. So whenever, at least my company, they're trying to make a decision, they're first trying to look what the others are doing. Again, fail fast, learn fast, and then move, I guess. And people, companies will make mistakes and things will happen, and yeah, you just have to go with it. But these are just unprecedented times. Nobody has a solution, so you might as well come up with a couple of good ideas that work for you. It's easier in tech industries. It's not so much easier in other industries. If you were in retail business, you have other challenges. The challenges are how many people will be on shift, how will you keep them safe, how will you keep the people who are coming, let's just say, into the store safe, how will the inventory move? Different problems, you'll have to find different solutions, right? But yeah, I mean, people are just so I guess if you have good people who can think, who can problem solve, it's more manageable than not. Technology definitely helps, is what we have seen. But this is not over yet by any, means. So there will be a lot of new ideas, there will be a lot of new solutions. Eventually, this will be over. It will not look like this in the end, but you know, just go with it. It's try and solve the smaller problems. Try and add value. My go-to motto in life is wherever there is chaos, there's usually profit to be made, right? So there is chaos, so there is a solution. And by profit, what I meant was that there are some new ideas to be generated. So just keep that in mind.
So, ma'am, as we just hear from you that one needs to have value, one needs to constantly upgrade himself and strive for betterment because it's completely a fast-moving world and one cannot work like that. So, how can one upgrade oneself and adopt to new changes?
It's um it's an interesting question, right? Because like I gave you my example. I was actually very reluctant to go back to school because I thought I had learned everything I had to learn. I was not willing to go to back to classroom. But you're right. So I used to think only doctors need to study for life or something like that. It's not true anymore. The pace with which we are with which we are moving in technology or even in other aspects, um, we just need to constantly upgrade ourselves, like our phone softwares, right? We just need constant upgrades, new features. So I would say it's more of an attitude shift. I think everything you need to know and learn is out there. Someone knows it, um, or there are classes, or there's something, um, or someone in your network knows how to get to it. You just need to be open to it, right? But at the core of it, I believe, at the core of it, fundamentally, things don't change. So there are some skills that if you start practicing, if you learn them, um, I don't think they change. So, for example, the two things I can tell you. One, I talked a lot about problem solving. And by problem solving, I mean, things around which decision is my work going to affect, and focus your resources on that. If you can contribute to a decision that is going to be made and success is going to happen because of that decision, I think that's what I mean by problem solving, by assessing the situation. Um, a lot of times, 50% of the work we do, frankly, is just work. It's just generating emails, it's just date Excel sheets and PowerPoints and slides. I'm not sure they add value. But if not 50%, at least 40% of your time should actually be focused at something that will produce a result or produce a decision. Otherwise, you have to learn to say no to some projects, even. So that's one, I would say. Uh, Try and learn about leaders, find a mentor, find someone you really, like in the faculty or in your seniors or something like that. Um, Set up just, you know, twice a month, set up a meeting just to talk about things. That's how you find mentors. Um, and talk to them about everything, about careers, about what's going on in the world, things like that. So those things help. That's how you keep up with things. Read, I would say a lot. Um, Read about everything. It's helpful. Keep yourself updated. The other thing I will say is the one basic thing that doesn't change is storytelling, the art of storytelling. Like how do you take an insight or a data point, and then how do you socialize that idea with the different teams? So I'll give you an example. We did a study on buying behavior. We did a study on how do gamers buy gaming laptop. Now we have certain results from focus groups, and obviously the laptop people are really interested. But there are other teams that need to be interested. The sales team should be on the same page. The channel team should be on the same page. The Our creative team should be on the same page so they can create, collateral that can be used or digital media that can be used. Our social team has to be on the same page. So how do you tell the story which is relevant to the right people? And there I can tell you three things I think in storytelling is very important. You have to know your audience. So if I'm talking about the same project, but I'm talking to two different people, you have to know what are you going to say? Why is it going to be different? So know your audience. It has to be a relevant conversation. You can't tell someone things just because they're interesting, at least in the in a personal relationship, sure, but in a professional relationship, it has to be relevant to what they're trying to do. My sales team will not be interested in listening to about gaming laptops if they are not going to sell gaming laptops ever. Um, but if I show them that because more people are working from home, people will need more laptops, and this is a great opportunity to sell more gaming laptops because then you can work and game on it, maybe then they'll be interested, right? And the third thing I would say in the storytelling is look at the bigger picture, right? Uh, you have to somehow appeal to your audience by giving them a vision which is larger than the smaller project. So I would say bigger picture, relevant information, know your audience. So practice these things. Um, you do a case study project. See if you can weave an interesting story out of the results. Practice them. Write about it. Write it in a way that's meaningful, that's impactful. And the other thing is problem solving. So I would say those things are super important. Um, yeah.
How to deal with the stress and in the process, because everyone now and then talks about the um, intelligence questions, but no one talks about the emotional questions. So how can one deal with the stress? And when you are at a such position of high responsibility, you cannot afford, I think, to, because you are also a leader at the same time. So how are you dealing with the stress that you are facing?
So I don't know if there is one easy answer for it. And again, it really depends on the company that you are, the leadership that you have in the group. I'll give you some small examples, right? Actually, I'll give you some small examples because they make a big difference. Pretty much all the companies that I know here in my local area, the Bay Silicon Valley, so they all moved to work from home, which is fantastic. But everyone is worried about jobs because, like I said, it has slowed down. The economy will slow down because there's just not enough money to go around. Everybody is very, stressed out about the jobs. People are actually so stressed out that they are working more. And because they're at home, there is no difference between the work life and the home life. So it's all blending together. So it's blending together, it's creating more stress and things like that. So what can we do? So what we can do is things like, um, at least in my company, actually a lot of companies I know, um, there are things we used to do at work which you cannot do now. For example, after hours, you would go out for a cup of coffee or for whatever, for happy hour. So people created these small things like we will have an online happy hour. So you're supposed to be online on video so that you can see each other's faces. And you don't have to talk about work. You just have to talk about, what your kids are thinking or whatever is happening around you. But it's just like a stress reliever. And that's as close to, social life of work that you can get in these days. But people make it a point to do that. At least in my company, the culture was before this happened, before COVID, um, we did not do a lot of video on WebEx. But now it's almost like an unsaid rule that if you are speaking, at least if you are speaking, you will turn your video on, right? Now, again, it's not a stress reliever, but there is something about being able to see the people you work with, uh, talking about the emotions, being able to see your leaders online, for example. So those are the small things. But again, they make a big impact. And generally, I would say about the stress, these are stressful times. You know, there's not a magic pill that you can pop and be stress free. But again, if you have built a career where you have these basic skills, no matter, where you go, you'll probably find a place for yourself because these are such, um, the books will teach you um, sort of the basics. Not all of them are applicable right away. The first time you will be in a company, the company will add more value to you first, then you will add back. But eventually, I think there'll be a level set. So, uh, again, I would say, especially if, you know, students doing online courses, teachers doing online classes, people who are working doing online work, I think you can still find a way to team build, for example. So there are games people play in teams now online. There's a popular, not famous, there's a popular game called Code Words that all the teams play here. And frankly, we do the same even in personal lives, right? We've not seen friends for such a long time. There are all sorts of stress. And again, the bigger stress is job loss and things like that. So the companies have made it a point. I think transparency is really good. Um, that's a stress reliever. If you can be upfront with your employees, with your teams, and you can tell them whatever is happening and give them enough heads up. Don't surprise them. This is enough of a surprise, I think, for a lifetime. Don't surprise them with um, that we have no more budgets from tomorrow. You know, if you know it's coming, build it up over time. Ask them to save, ask them to do things. Um, so I think just be a little bit genuine, be a little more empathetic, and try to create team spirits even online. You can do many small things. There are many examples you can learn from, like I gave, right? So you'll have team meetings, turn on your videos if you can, overshare if you can, because this online thing is the only way we can communicate uh, for now.
So, for our viewers, if you have any questions, you can drop it to me in the chat box. So, meanwhile, ma'am, also like to ask one thing, like, like what will be the developments and the improvements that the corporate world will focus upon now after this situation, and in future, what will be the future of the corporate?
Um, it's a really interesting question. I think it will really dep so at a very actually, yeah, let me start by saying this. So these are global problems now. Most of the problems we face now are global problems. Um, even a pandemic, but even things like climate change or um, people not being fair to everybody or whatever. These are global problems, but unfortunately, or fortunate, or that's the way we are. We are divided into these nations who have different cultures, who have different problems of their own local nature. So things will not look the same for everybody, right? Even though they're facing the same problem. So what I can speak of US first because I've worked here for longer. So whenever this ends, at least the way it's shaping out to be, I don't think we will go back to being exactly how we were. Because the fear is one that, well, not fear, but the expectation is that it's not like something happened for 2 months and went away. It's going to stay here for a long time. People have made investments. Companies have invested in laptops, in data centers, in equipment, um, and other things. So they're not just going to take that away. So this is such a long thing that I think the impact of it would be also long term. It's quite possible that people will have flexi hours, which means they can live anywhere or they can live anywhere at least part of the time and still work, which is great because then you're not bound by physical limitation of where someone is. There'll be other types of work where um, there'll just be more scrutiny. There'll be just more around you have to be healthy to be able to um, do that type of work. Um, People might be a little more cautious. People might also be a little more prepared. So if this happens again, or if something like this happens one more time, what do we do? But I do think the workplace and the workforce might actually shift. And that might not be a bad thing. It just means that first it was globalization. So a lot of the work that we do, for example, is not even based in US, right? Our design teams are in India. A lot of the partners I work with are in Europe. Um, but now, even for local people, it might not matter where you physically are. Um, on the other hand, we might also lose things like collaboration. So I'll give you an example. When I'm at work, the main reason I like to going to work is because I can talk to a lot of people at work. And sometimes I get to know things that I will never know if I was sitting at home. And that will just go away for a really long time. So then I have to figure out how do I cope with this or how do I find a solution for that. So I think this is all still very loose. Nothing is set in stone, yes, yet. But but the workforce might change. So for you, what is relevant? When you become, first you become part of the team, eventually you'll become managers or you'll manage resources and budgets and people. You might have to manage teams which are physically not in the same place. You might have to manage resources and budgets according to the regions or whatever else there is. You might have to manage distribution of work depending on what infrastructure does your team have. So those are completely different decisions. If I gave you a team of 5 people who were physically located in one place, who you saw every day, versus 5 people, all 5 located in different states, even completely changes the way you will manage them. How you will have one-on-one interaction, how will you evaluate them? Because their interpersonal relationships will also be different. So, so start thinking about that workplace will not be the same or may not be the same physically. India might have less of those challenges just because of the nature of how corporates are set up. But again, I do think there will be some changes. It's just the nature of this thing is too big and for too long. And companies have even made investments for it to just, go away, snap fingers. So just think about that when you put distance between people, how the dynamics change.
So, ma'am, I think learning will never stop. But since we are time bounded, I think we'll have to end the session here. So, I thank you on behalf of Triple IM. Thank you, Shweta, ma'am, for sharing your valuable insights and making a learning experience for all of us.
Thank you. I wish everybody who's here and even whoever is going to watch the recording my very best wishes. Like I said, nothing remains as it is. So chin up um, and do well.
And for the viewers who are out there, keep learning, keep exploring, and as ma'am has said, fail fast and learn fast. So future is all yours, and you can check out this session on the YouTube and the Facebook page of Triple IM. So thank you everyone, thank you ma'am, and thank you viewers for joining us for this session.